You're listening to the Skylight Books podcast. We're an independent, general interest bookstore putting great reads in the hands of people in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Hosted by resident Skylighters, we're here to bring you new and exciting author conversations, group reads, and bookseller chats. Happy listening.
Hello, my beautiful listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. This is the Skylight Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Danny Ramadan to read from his new book, The Foghorn Echoes, followed by a conversation. Danny is a Syrian-Canadian author, public speaker, and advocate for LGBTQ refugees. His debut novel, The Clothesline Swing, was shortlisted for the Lambda Literary Award, longlisted for Canada Reads, and named the Best Book of the Year by the Globe and Mail and Toronto Star. He has an MFA in creative writing from UBC and currently lives in Vancouver with his husband. Danny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Lance. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
No, it's our pleasure to have you on. Your book is great, and we're excited about this. Before we start our conversation, you have a reading for us?
Absolutely. So The Foghorn Echoes is the book I'm going to read for you today. The book follows the story of two gay Syrian boys. In the first chapter, they express their love for one another, but a majorly traumatic experience separates them. The book follows up 10 years later, alternating between their perspectives. One is Hussam, and he lives in Vancouver, and he drowns his trauma with a lot of sex, drugs, and alcohol, while the other is Wassim, and he is homeless in Damascus. I'm going to do something that other authors would consider blasphemy, but I'm going to read from the very end of the book. But this is a self-contained story that I find really funny, and I want to read for you today. The taxi driver asked if I was escaping military service, and I told him that I was an only child. You're a lucky one, he said. You're the only one who won't be called upon in these times. You never know, I said from the back seat. You never know, he repeated. There were three of us in the car, myself, the driver, and his friend in the front. They told me the trip across the border won't be long, and especially since I was legally leaving Syria with my passport. There wouldn't be any trouble at the border. We passed the windy streets of Aleppo quickly, leaving behind us the heavy shelling noise in eastern neighborhoods. With every explosion, I jumped in the back seat while both the driver and his friend nonchalantly continued their conversation. On our way out of the city, we were saluted by its dimly lit citadel. The fortress, made of stones too large for a dozen men to carry, had survived 2,000 years and hundreds of wars. It looked abandoned, save for a large Syrian flag and a tower-tall picture of Bashar al-Assad. Hours later, we neared the Turkish border. We parked in the long line of cars leaving the country, some empty except for a passenger or two, others packed to the roof with luggage. The line stretched for miles ahead of us, and the driver and his friend left the car to smoke. I heard a ringtone coming from inside the car. I lowered the window and told the driver that his phone was ringing. He flashed me his phone in his hand, and before I could say any more, the ringing stopped. By the time we reached the border check, the sun had already risen and dryness filled my mouth. The driver's friend had fallen asleep while the driver smoked yet another cigarette, puffing the smoke through his opened window. He elbowed his friend awake, and they handed their documents to the officer to leave through. Where's Malik? The driver asked. I thought this was his shift. Malik is sick today, the officer responded. He looked at me through the window, and I handed him my passport. He examined it in the direct sunlight, then bent it. I thought he might bite it next to ensure its authenticity, but he finally handed it back. The driver was about to start the engine again, but the officer asked him to open the trunk. Malik never asked us to open the trunk. His voice was steady. I'm not Malik, now open the trunk. The driver exchanged a look with his friend before he pulled the lever by his side and the trunk unlocked. What's going on? I whispered to them. The driver hushed me while following the officer with his eyes. We are fucked. His friend nodded in agreement. It finally dawned on me that someone was hiding in the trunk. That is where the ringtone came from. The officer pulled the trunk open. Seconds passed. My fingers trembled, and I felt a tightness in my stomach. You brought this on me, I whispered to the driver and his friend, and they shushed me in unison. A few moments, excuse me, a few more seconds passed. Then the officer closed the trunk, tapped on it twice, and ordered us to drive away. The driver, not believing his ears, hit the road fast, leaving a cloud of dust behind. I wanted to look back, but he shouted at me to keep my face forward. We drove for 10 minutes in silence until the border disappeared behind us. And then he parked on the side of the road, and the three of us jumped out of the car together. We opened the trunk. Inside was the smuggled man, who was drunk. The driver explained to me that the man was due to join military service to fight on the front lines. Not wanting to be part of the war and knowing well that his name was on the no-travel list, he had no option but to be smuggled. The man broke into fits of laughter and stank of whiskey. He told us that using the flashlight on his phone, he had found a box containing 4 bottles of whiskey stashed back there. I had nothing else to do but drink. The man shielded his eyes from the harsh sun. He had guzzled the alcohol on an empty stomach and had passed out until the officer opened the trunk. We both froze, he told us. Without thinking, he had handed a full bottle of whiskey to the officer. The officer looked at the bottle and back at the man, then snatched the bottle and closed the trunk. The funny part is, the man said slowly, I can't tell if I gave him the bottle filled with alcohol or the one I drank, then filled with my own piss. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great reading.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing from, you're one of few who, go from the end of the book for a reading. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's a good part. It's a good story to tell. I like contained stories that I can do a reading with. Yeah.
And I think it leaves a lot of mystery. Like, how do we lead up instead of the beginning where it's like, okay, this is us getting introduced to the story, the ending where it's like, oh, how does it end up there? You know? Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk about this book. It feels just like always relevant in both just the queerness of it and, the current events of it, you know what I mean? The real, I hate to use the word authenticity because it's not a good word for it, but just the heartfelt of it, the connection in it, Yeah, not the authenticity, the connection of it. Where did the idea for this book start from you? For you?
So this is my sophomore this is my sophomore novel, right? This is my second novel, and I was struggling to come up with a story for it for a while, honestly. My first book came out and was quite successful here in Canada, and I wanted to be better, to write a better story, I guess. And I struggled. I had an imposter syndrome that filled me up for weeks. I just couldn't put pen on paper. And then one day at 3 o'clock in the morning, honestly, I was asleep. Here in Vancouver, we are on the ocean, and it was foggy outside. And then I woke up to the sound of the foghorn. And I've never heard a foghorn before, Lance. I've never had that experience in my life. I lived on coastal cities before. I lived in Beirut, for example, but we never had the experience of using a foghorn. We don't have fog with that in that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
The other sound that I had that sounded a lot like foghorn was the sirens of war back in Damascus. It just threw me off. I was so freaked out. I jumped on bed and I'm like, Godzilla is coming. I lost my mind basically.
Wow.
My husband woke up and it was a mess in our house, and it took like 45 minutes to calm me down, and he explained what a foghorn is. And then, of course, like nobody went back to sleep. Me, my husband, and the dog, we never went back to sleep that night. But I sat down and I wrote that morning. I wrote a scene that ended up being in the second half of the book and became the essence of the book. The idea of being in a safe space, being surrounded by safety, yet the trauma of the past is still at war with yourself.
And I mean, that just felt, there was something, I mean, the book isn't, everyone's specific story. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people are going to be reading the book who are, learning a lot about PTSD from this perspective. But I mean, there's still a lot of like what you were saying there, the idea of a certain sense bringing you back to something in your past that's accessible. And, that's really beautiful in that way. Your book feels accessible to anyone reading it. Did that come from your own, want in the book, or was that something afterwards that you were just like, wow, this is a story of like PTSD and someone's inherent trauma?
So I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I went to therapy for 2-3 years for it. I still navigate it. And I think when I wrote the book, I had multiple engines that I wanted the book to move forward using. So one of the engines is the idea of war within yourself, war with your past, war between two people who are beloved to each other, but also the idea of trauma and the navigation of trauma, navigation of post-traumatic stress, and how that stress can take over your life in a way. And yeah, like I did think, I have a mentor. So me and my mentor, we spent almost a year just discussing those themes and trying to see them from my own perspective, from my own life as a human, as well as from the way that I present myself and the counseling that I went through and the therapy that I went through. So having those in-depth philosophical conversations really helped me aspire to write a book that tells that story. At the same time, I really didn't want to write a philosophical book. I didn't want to write a book where I'm lecturing you about trauma, or I'm lecturing you about like the trigger moment or whatever. I didn't want to come across as it's not a psychology book, it's a novel, you know what I mean? So right. I wanted to present you with specific, clear human examples of what it means to live through such stress that you end up with post-traumatic stress disorder.
And I mean, you do. I feel that you accomplished that in this.
Thank you.
I mean, it must have been hard to, like, for yourself, you have to put that on paper. You have to put that on metaphorical paper. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't. I mean, you might have typewritered it, you might have Truman Capote in the tub wrote it, like. Honestly, kudos to you if you did.
I did not. I typed it on my laptop. I typed it on my Mac, and I'm the last time I held a pen to a paper was like while I was, I don't know, leave it a post-it note to my husband. It's
well, now you know. For the next one, you know exactly how you do it. Type in that. That's an author photo right there. Get it. Go grab.
Yeah. But it will be very Instagram influencer kind of thing, where I will go into next to a typewriter and take the picture with it. and then go home and actually use my actual laptop to write.
And you know what? That's a brilliant idea. That's a free
Sure.
idea I'm giving you right there. Go be that.
Thank you, Len.
The next era of your life as Instagram influencer. And you listen, it sounds great. That's where the real money is.
Yes, I agree.
The next, I mean, on the topic of PTSD, you know, coming from that, the dynamic there. The two main characters of the story, you know, they suffer from PTSD, but in very different ways. Like there's two very distinct ways that they do it, and you map it out really well. Where, you know, we feel like we understand how they both are, you know, going through their lives and dealing with their trauma. How was it writing it from those two specific and different experiences?
So I'm a storyteller, so I'll tell you a story. In 2018, after I released the Clothesline Swing, and I have been outlining the next book, I was on a panel. And you know, the Q&A after a panel, which is the most dreaded thing for any author. Like, we love the Q&A because a lot of people raise their hands and they ask lovely questions, but also there's the chance of the guy who raises his hands and ask a nasty question. And I had this person raise their hand and they asked, what am I working on next? Which is a fair question. And I said, I'm working on the story of two queer men who are navigating the trauma of leaving Syria. And the person looks me in the eye and they said, didn't you just write this book? Which in reference to my first novel. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I kind of flipped. I'm sorry. I felt bad because I kind of sort of flipped on the stage and I got really angry. But the idea is that a white author is allowed to write a bajillion story about white characters doing a white million different things.
Same thing.
And me as a brown person who's writing about the queer Syrian refugee, I have written the manual with my first book, and I cannot write about queer Syrian refugees anymore. So that, honestly, like that story, that specific interaction got me to want to write two different perspectives where two boys who are identical in every way face the same exact trauma and then react to it in completely different ways. So one of them is he is fighting, he is navigating trauma with a lot of internal conflict, with a lot of conflict with the people around him, while the other is flight. He is escaping this trauma. He left the whole country. He went to Vancouver, and he's drowning his sorrows with drugs, sex, and alcohol, just trying to escape that trauma. Right. And I just wanted to write that book that way. I wanted to separate them and show how one identical trauma can change two identical boys to have two completely different outcomes.
And I mean, that must have been personally, you know, did you have to like investigate your own trauma to separate that, to like go through each specific thing and say, I'm going to let this trauma go to, and tell me if because I've only read their names throughout
Hussam and Wassim.
Hussam and Wassim. I just want to make sure. I was like,
yeah, you're fine.
Don't cancel me. But like
not today.
But like one characteristic, like you go through your own specific trauma and say this characteristic is going to Hussam and this one's going to Wassim, and like, you know, kind of have to do that throughout the book, right? Was it difficult for you?
So, you know, we always say that somebody has a trauma response, right? Like they're either flight or fight. And I think that that's very black and white, because like it's not your star sign. It's not like, oh my God, I'm such a flight traumatic response person. Oh my God, look at me.
That's your influencer era. I'm just saying it's coming through. It's coming through there. You got something there.
Yeah. My star trauma sign is a flight, but my moon rising is a fight. Anyway,
exactly.
yeah. I think I responded to a lot of the traumas that I have a lot of traumatic experiences as a gay man growing up in Syria, and then a lot of traumatic experiences navigating the civil war in Syria, and then traumatic experiences navigating being a refugee in Lebanon. And funny enough, a lot of traumatic experiences trying to establish myself and build a sense of belonging here in Canada, because the idea that a refugee arrives somewhere in North America and now they're A-OK is such a lie. It takes a lot of work to establish yourself here and to navigate all of that. And I responded to all of those traumas in different ways. Like I never had like one specific way that I responded to one specific trauma. I escaped some of them, I fought others, I froze sometimes. And that's what happens. That is how life is. So I think I did take the complexity of all of those experiences and I tried to distill it into two characters, one that responds always with flight and one that responds always with fight. And that is how I use my real life experiences to inspire my two characters.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I I have always thought when hearing about and learning about the Syrian refugee crisis, and Syrian reading and learning about a lot of Syrian refugees who have shared their stories and been very open and vocal about it, is that especially the westernized world wants to box it, wants to say, yeah, they are all Syrian refugees and this is exactly how every one of their stories are, where it's like, no, there's so much there. I as a child of two immigrant parents myself, I'm like, no, there's so many layers there. The history there, the everyone's story is different. They're going to different places. There's so many different levels to that. There's so many layers to it. There's there's the idea of being both a refugee and an immigrant to a new country. There's barriers there. There's so much, but the world loves to categorize things and then put them on a shelf and never have to really investigate that. So I think a book like yours is great because these are two, as you said, identical boys who are responding to things very differently. And I mean, even Wassim's character is who comes to Canada, right?
No, the other way around. So Sam's character comes to Canada, Wassim's character stays in Damascus.
Well, Hassim's character, it's so interesting to see a character who he comes to Canada, he's the dream, right? He's living the what people think is I'm talking about the westernized world is he made it, everything's fine now. It's not. It's not. It's very there's so many more layers to that. And I think that sharing that story is great. It's what people need to be reading and seeing in it. With the book being out, have you seen a response in that way?
I think I agree with you. There's this certain idea, this certain expectation that you arrive at the airport and now everything is totally fine. Everything is A-OK. And you will be happy forever. And that idea is not shared only by Westerners. Syrians who are still back in Syria or refugees across the Middle East, they also think that when they arrive to Canada, everything is going to be A-OK and everything will be fine. I had the same idea exactly back in Lebanon, that the minute that I will arrive to Canada, I don't know, an agent will be waiting for me at the airport with a contract so I can sign on the dotted line, and then a list of all the handsome boys who are of appropriate age who want to take me out on a date. That
didn't happen.
What? No, it didn't. I know it was in the package and everything.
I know.
It wasn't for sure.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, there's the agency. I'm telling you nowadays.
Yeah. You know what? I want to talk to a manager about this because that's unacceptable.
let's Karen this shit out.
Exactly.
My God. But anyway,
Dude, I'm
that's
sorry.
God, it's okay, you're okay. But anyways, my point is that I loved writing that story. I found it really healing for me to write that story. And to try to create this understanding through Hussam as he is navigating Canada. Because flawed as he is, I honestly think of him as a lovable character. He's a sweetheart. He's like deep down inside, he is fucked up, but like he's a sweetheart, and I adore him that way. I received a lot of messages from folks who went through the same experience, who read the book, who have been here in Canada, who have been quite moved by the representation of that experience. I think that resonated with a lot of folks, and it also resonated with a lot of white folks who never thought about this before. A lot of folks who are born here who never had that experience before. So I'm thankful that that's something they could see through my art.
Yeah, and that's great. I love to hear that. I hope for more in the future to discover these stories and be able to either find connection in it or be able to broaden their perspectives on things, because that's what we need in this world: more people broadening their perspectives and being able to step outside of their own box and learn how other people live. With the story, one thing that I found very impressive was like in the thing a lot of authors, definitely try to do, but are not always successful in doing, is telling, a story kind of backwards and able to uncover the plot because from the very beginning, you give us this like plot point that you think you're like, okay, wow, this is crazy. And then you don't give it to us immediately. You don't give it to us what the immediate aftermath is immediately. And you have us, have to uncover the plot as we go throughout the story. How was that as a writer writing it that way? Because, again, not a lot of people are successful in that.
Yeah. I actually love doing that. So I love that I start the book with an inciting incident where something massive happens, and then I'm like, okay, so you see this? Yeah, I'll tell you about it later. Let's hang out here for a bit first. Yeah, I like that very much. One thing that really helped was plotting for me. So I did a lot of book structured drawings that helped me put this together. So I created a chronological line. So what actually happened, and then as the years go by, what happens after and what happened after. So I knew my whole story from A to Z right there, drawn on a wall. And then I created the book storyline, this non-linear storytelling where I use both characters to tell the story. And I loved creating that because it ended up having two different books in front of me, and I managed to create them in a way that works for me. But also I loved creating that from their perspective. So I'm writing first person perspective from both characters, right? Alternating who's telling the story. And people lie and people remember things differently. Yeah. So there was the truth, what happened according to me, who created the story. And then there was the truth, what happened according to this character, and the truth, what happened according to that character. And having all of those different tools in front of me, all of those different structures presented on the wall in front of me, just helped me create a streamlined, nonlinear narrative in the book.
And I mean, yeah, again, it worked. It worked very well. And I think it's interesting talking about, the truth in those three ways. Because, yeah, you usually hear about the unreliable narrator who's remembering things from their perspective. But you, a lot of the time, don't hear about, the author's perspective, too. What is the truth in that? And was it easy for you to, step away from your own truth of how the story, is compared to how it was for each character? Was that an easy, step to take?
I think I don't like playing God on the page. I don't like writing a story from the perspective of somebody who's assured with their words. I'm writing memoir at the moment, which means that I have to be assured of my word, and that is so annoying. But I'm trying to find ways to create speculative nonfiction in writing memoir, but I digress. My desire is to write from an unreliable narrator, not unreliable because of who they are. They're unreliable because of the trauma that affected them, and basically mushed their memories together. So that is such a complex point of view that I love to jump in. It's kind of my comfort chair. Like this is where I shine most when I'm writing. I find writing a reliable narrator who's telling you things exactly as they happen, the Jane Austen style, to be quite restrictive, to be honest. So it would be harder for me to write from that perspective than to write from an unreliable narrator.
A quick, side tangent off. Yeah, with your memoir, I don't, and this is, I'm saying it to the audience because I think it's important. It's not important to like, did you ever play the telephone game when you were younger? Yeah, right. Iconic game, amazing game, wonderful. I still play it sometimes at dinner parties. It's fun. But like I feel like your own mind kind of, whenever you try to remember the past, is playing the telephone game, where like you remember how it happened, and then 5 years later you're telling yourself how it happened again, but there might be some differences, and so on and so forth. We're like, there are a lot of authors, I think, the best successful authors who are telling memoirs are okay with the fact that some of it might be fiction, but they're telling it, right? It's important. It's not important. It's a story. It's a story in its own. It's a narrative. It's not having to be exact. I'm not like, I could watch a documentary if I want like specific facts on something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, memoir, you gotta lean into the fact that, like, sometimes it might not be 100% authentic to what you thought happened there, but like, it makes it more fun. It makes it more fun.
It really does. I have a friend who's an author. Her name is Jeannie Chang. She is a fantastic author. Actually, I love her. And she said that writing memoir is basically writing historical fiction.
Yeah.
Because you are basically looking back at your own history. The other thing is what you remember right now. I'm sorry, but like I am 38, for example, and how I remember myself when I was 10 is different than when I was 25 trying to remember myself when I was 10, because the 25-year-old is an immature jerk who was running around dating half of the city he lived in, while this established 38-year-old author is much more mature than that jerk, and sees things differently and find relations differently and understand the world differently. So that is really important to me to acknowledge while I'm writing memoir. And as for the fiction in memoir, to be honest, I'm more interested in what is true over what is real. I prefer to tell you a truthful story about the experiences of growing up as a queer person of color in the Middle East, and then coming here to Canada as an immigrant of color and navigating racism here, leaving homophobia in exchange for racism, which is a lot of fun. But I would rather navigate that with the truthful life stories than to tell you exactly how things happened.
And I mean, that's truth in its own. Like you're telling, like there's also another one of my favorite memoirs, things that I feel like is coming up recently, is people telling memoirs and then having people who are in that story tell their own perspective of those memoirs. Because like it gives it shapes it, but it also gives it more fun. It gives it more fun to see how, like, And I wonder for authors too, if it makes it more fun to see, oh, this is how this person saw what happened, than to think of like, what happened in my perspective of it. And, that's, oh God, that's just therapy, isn't it? That's at that point, it's just having a session with my therapist. Ugh, I should talk to her about
This
this.
is group therapy, I'm telling you. Like, bring
It's
all of your
group
friends
therapy.
and family and have a group therapy session and see how that goes.
Yeah, no, every family should write a book. And everyone separately should write a book in the family, and then everyone reads it to see what was the truth. And the truth is in there somewhere, but who knows who has it, right?
That's how you end up with a murder mystery. Who
Yeah,
killed
no,
who
and
then?
tell me that's not what you want to see in a movie. Listen, that sounds like an A24 film come to life. Let's
I
go.
am into it. I am into it, my man. Yeah, yeah.
No, sounds good. I'm just putting out ideas here. Um, One thing I want to talk about, another interesting thing you did in their story that I think again paid off well was, there was a fantastical or paranormal element to it that was really cool. You have a ghost in there that's haunting uh Wassim's character. And it's interesting to put, in a book that feels so grounded in a lot of ways, to put that element in there that kind of heightens um the speculative world of it. Like, how was that for you? What was that choice to put this ghost in the story?
So Kalila, the ghost that haunts Wassim in Damascus, is actually a response to the ghost of the father that haunts Hussam in Vancouver. So Hussam, I manifested his trauma in this ghost, the ghost of his father, that is around him all the time. He is in the middle of a nightclub, dancing to the beat, shirtless, and the ghost of his father is just like staring at him from the corner. And that ghost is a manifestation of Hossam's trauma. It's not really there. It's grounded in that way. But I wanted the two characters to echo each other, right? So I didn't want to leave Hussam without his own ghost. And given that Hossam's father's ghost is, no, that's not how he said that. And I wanted the two characters to echo in a way. So I wanted Wassim to have his own ghost, similar to how Hussam has his father as a ghost. And Hussam's father's ghost is not real. So I wanted Wassim's ghost to be real. And then I decided to create Kalila, the woman who has a motherly figure towards Wassim. And then I didn't know what to do with her. And at the same time, I was reading this memoir by a Syrian author, the memoir called The Daughter of Damascus, beautiful memoir. And it reminded me a lot of the feminine energy of Syria, the feminine beauty of Syria, the history of women in Syria. And I wanted to bring that into the book. Also, my therapist is a female. She is a First Nation person from here, from Vancouver, who is fantastic, and I've been working with her for 6 years, and she had been amazing in offering me support. So I wanted to marry all of this, the history of Syria as a country, alongside the feminine energy of Syrian women, alongside the grounding stability of my therapist, who all come together to bring me groundness. So that's where the ghost of Kalila came from. And I don't, somebody asked me if this is a ghost story, and I'm like, I think this is a literary work of fiction that includes a ghost. And as a Syrian person, that is totally normal in the way that we tell stories. Having ghosts or ghouls or witches or angels in our stories is part of who we are. So I'm not going to, so I don't think of it as like a magical element. I wouldn't call it magic realism. I would just say that I needed a ghost there, so I added a ghost there.
I mean, I love that explanation. I needed a ghost there, so I added a ghost there. End of sentence. No, and I mean, it's not new. It's Shakespearean. It's a lot of I mean, that's westernized. Let me get out of the Western perspective of it. But a lot of like, yeah, non-westernized books or stories use it, and it's beautiful. But yeah, I love that you're just like, I need a ghost, I got a ghost. What can you do about that? And it works really well. I mean, did it help you to have that ghost in the story too, in the sense of like, getting to put a little bit of yourself in there in a way? Like, this is a
I will again, I'll tell you a story because this is what I'm good at.
yes,
I
please.
was I was hanging out with Isabel Lind. She wrote the House of Ghosts,
Mhm.
fantastic Latin American author. And we're talking about Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who's another
Oh,
fantastic Latin American author.
one of my
And she met
favorite
him. Oh
authors.
God, I adore him. I adore
Oh,
him. I have
so
no
good.
idea how I can be as good as he is. I really want
I
to go.
mean, he, I love In the Time of Cholera changed me as I think I read it when I was 12, and I was like, this is art. This is so good. This
Right.
is,
Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
tell it to people. Sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted you though.
No, totally fine. So I was talking to Isabel Lind about this specific scene in 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia
Mhm.
Marquez, in which this beautiful woman who lives in the village is outside doing the laundry, putting the clothes on the clotheslines.
Mhm.
And an angel comes from the sky and snatches her because she's too beautiful to live on this earth. And Isabel tells me that what Gabriel Garcia Marquez is trying to do here is to tell you that the woman escaped with a suitor that her family didn't agree with, but the family, to keep honor, said, "Oh yeah, an angel came down, snatched her, and left her up." But Gabriel Marquez never tried to explain that. He didn't tell us about the details of the escapee. He just shared the magic realism of the woman being snatched by angels.
Mhm.
And then Isabel was like, both stories are true, both stories are real. You know what I mean? And both
Yeah.
stories are telling of something. So the woman escaping with the boy that the family didn't agree with is telling of love. The story of the girl being snatched away by angels is telling of honor. There's a lot of reasons why those two stories can coexist at the same time.
Mhm.
And that's what I tried to do with the ghost in both Damascus and Vancouver. I
Right.
wanted to create ghosts where they are telling of a truth, even if you question if they exist or not.
And that, I mean, yeah, what better answer do I need? That was, no, you should, and you say you do, but like never ever give an answer without telling a story, because that is a
Mm-hmm.
gift. That is a gift.
Thank you.
And you do it so well. Um, well, sadly, we have to wrap up, but I
Aww,
know, right? We could,
gosh.
I could ask a few more questions about this, because I mean, this book was just so, I mean, there was a lyrical vibe to it too, where I was reading it and I was just like, oh, this is I love dialogue. I love
Mm-hmm.
dialogue, and I love reading dialogue because I feel like, I mean, I'm also one of those people who loves to go to public places and hear people have conversations, because I feel like, it's very illuminating to hear what
It
people are
is.
saying. But
Yeah.
like, and that's why I think I love dialogue in um, literature too, because, it's great to hear. I mean, the internal monologues of people are fine, but like, hearing how people talk and hearing
Mm-hmm.
what people say to each other and how they greet each other and how they,
Mm-hmm.
you get so much out of that. And I mean, you do
Mm-hmm.
such a great job of it. Was it like to capture the voices of the people in the book? Was that hard for you?
Mm. So I learned my dialogue from an author called Thomas King. He is quite
Mm-hmm.
famous here in Canada, I think in North America.
Mm-hmm.
He has a short story called Borders, where
Oh yeah.
an indigenous woman is saying goodbye to her daughter, who is leaving the reserve where they live and
Mm-hmm.
moving to Salt Spring City or something. And in the dialogue, they're having a conversation about water. The mother is like, oh, this is shite coffee. And the daughter is like, hey, I'll visit you every now and then. And the mother is like, yeah, but the water is terrible in Salt Lake City. It's going to be terrible for you. And she's like, yeah, but like, I can come and visit. And she's like, yeah. And when you're making your coffee, you'll have to use bottled water. So that dialogue really stayed with me because the mother here has 3 layers in what you're saying. There is what is being said. So she's talking about coffee. She is criticizing the coffee. What is being unsaid. So what is the meaning, the tone, the intention behind the line, which is she's criticizing Salt Lake City, telling her daughter that her decision to move will have consequences. And that's why she's using coffee as an example. And then there's what can never be said, which is, I understand that you're growing up, but I don't want you to leave me. So those 3 layers of dialogue existing in a conversation about coffee is literally what I love to do with dialogue. It's finding, because we have a lot of jargon. We talk to each other all the time, and we talk to each other about the weather. We talk to each other about everything. And a lot of what we say doesn't have those 3 layers of dialogue, doesn't have the depth. But sometimes we say something and it's so deep and meaningful, and it has something that is very inverted into who we are. And those are the lines of dialogue that I like to bring up and throw in for the reader. Those are the lines of dialogue that usually stands out, because it forces you to think more about what is being said here.
And I mean, that's in itself a great writing lesson of like, what is dialogue, the levels of what dialogue bring, versus like you saying, oh, this is what they meant in the book, or like, she's sad. she frowns because she's mad at her. Like, like dialogue can tell a bigger story than just saying it. It's just saying what the people are feeling or what it means. And I mean, that's, if you're a writer listening to this, please take note of that, because it's so important to the writer. Because I feel like I read so many things from like newer writers, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, because everyone, you have to grow, you have to start off somewhere, and writing is not an easy thing to do. But you read so much dialogue from people where you're like, okay, but like, what are they trying to say? Where's the what is the next layer thing? Like, don't just tell me it in exposition or in your narration or whatever. Like, give it to me in like actual, like, give it to me in actual like subtlety, and have me read between the lines, which is it's I feel like read between the lines is like one of those things that people are like, oh, that's such a simple and terrible phrase to say, and then you read someone's work, you're like, but you didn't do it. Like,
it's not like, happening.
Where is it? You say it's simple, but I'm not seeing it. Read between the lines. I mean, I'm going to even note that I say this and I'm like giving a critique on it, and I'm going to look at my own writing afterwards and be like, damn, you know what I didn't do? You know what I didn't do?
Oh, gosh. But
writing.
Lance, let me tell you one thing. It's really important to realize writing is hard, not because you're trying to write. Writing is hard because you're trying to write well. That is the major difference here. The idea that you can go back to your work and find, because anybody can put 2 sentences together. That is happening. People write, they learn to write. One of the very first skills that we learn in schools is writing. But writing well and finding the things that will move people, will have emotions in them, that is the hard work. That is definitely the hard work.
And I mean, I need to hear that too. Writing well is the hard work. It is, and it is an uphill battle. It's like, I feel like you finish something and tell me, I mean, this is your sophomore novel and you're on to your next work. Like, it doesn't, you get better, but it doesn't get easier. You know what I mean? Right. It's which each book, it's like still climbing that hill.
But one thing that I will say right now is something that I learned with writing this book, to be honest, and that is something my mentor, John Vinia, love you, John, he said to me, is that we have to learn to be kind to our words. The idea that you can sit down and write a masterpiece from your first trial is outlandish. It's impossible. There's nobody will be able to. You're not Gabriel Garcia Marquez. You're not going to write a masterpiece from the first couple sentences. So it makes sense that you would write something and then you're judgmental of it. Just be kind to it and try to write something, try to edit it, make it better over and over and over. This book went through 17 drafts. And I assure you, when I read the first draft compared to the last one, they are not connected. In like the first one is basically when a child throws a horse, and the 17th one is when it's a unicorn made of fire. You know what I mean? It's
that's the meme, right? It's like the first draft.
That's what I'm trying to say with.
I was like, I know. I was like, where do I've seen this, and I was like, oh, because it's the meme.
Oh god.
No, well, the last thing I want to ask you is, with this book, and after writing it, did you feel some sort of inner peace with like a younger version of yourself, and like get to like, let that part of you not to rest, but to like, reconcile. The image I'm thinking of is like, you looking at a younger version of yourself and able to, give that version a hug, or, understanding, and like, because it's hard to like look back at yourself sometimes and like, find love there. But like, did you get to that place yourself?
It's this question is kind of like RuPaul showing the picture to the queen of their younger selves, and they're like, what do you have to tell to young Danny here?
And so what do you have to tell to young Danny? Exactly. I'm holding that picture. Listeners, you're not seeing it. Don't worry, you're not seeing it, but I'm holding that picture. Wouldn't it be crazy if I pulled up a younger picture of you and I said, what do you have to say?
What do you have to say to this child? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, child. I would say, gosh, it's writing the book before it was a trial, was an experiment. When I finished writing my debut novel, The Clothesline Swing, I didn't even know that book will be eligible to be read, to be honest. Like I was writing in a second language. I still write in a second language, of course, in English. I've never written anything in English before. I've never written a novel altogether before. And then I wrote a book and I was so unsure, so unsteady, completely imbalanced. I didn't know if I did a good job or not. The thing about this book is that when I finished writing it, when I sent it to my editor for that final draft, knowing damn well that it's done, I knew it's a good book. I have reached a point where I can tell that 5-year-old in the picture you're holding right now, that you will be able to reach that. You'll be able to write that book, and it will be good. And you will know it in your heart of hearts that this is the thing that you're meant to do. Yeah.
And I mean, I hope that for you specifically, that brought peace, peace to you. And I mean, is in a way, I feel like that should be in a lot of art, especially when art reflects, your own life. And by that I mean Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, because that's what I expect he saw his life as. Insane. I don't know why. It must be because I just saw the Rings of Power ad somewhere. I didn't watch the show. I just saw an ad. But no, I mean, I was trying to be serious and look at me.
That's
No, I
fine.
mean seriously, like I hope that that's a mission for whoever is trying to write like this. Like you get to find you write it for yourself and then you write it for an audience. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
that's you know that's my therapist is probably listening to this like I know what I'm going to talk to him. It's my session. Like and it's like how's your journaling going, and I'm just like I don't want to do this.
Not
No,
today. Not today.
not today. Can we
No.
have one session where you tell me I'm doing well? um
Oh.
no, she does, she's great, my therapist is great, shout out. No, I mean, yeah, and again, every therapist should have a family write a book and see what perspective it is, and see what comes of it. That sounds like a great thought experiment, and we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
But Danny, before I go on another tangent about something I have no idea what I'm talking about, uh, thank you though. Thank you so much for coming on. Listeners, you can go by the Foghorn Echoes. I don't every time I like put an N somewhere in the
Yeah.
middle of Foghorn. It's one of
The
those words.
funky doll
The fun
echoes. The funky doll echoes. Yeah.
the funky doll echoes. You know what? That sounds like a sequel. That sounds like a sequel right there.
Oh God.
I'm saying.
I will hold the cover rights for that title. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
And you're welcome. That's a free one right
Thank
there
you.
from me. No, listeners, go by the Foghorn Echoes right now. It's available in your local bookstore, including Skylight Books. Go grab a copy. It's such a fantastic book and just like beautifully written, beautifully written. Danny, is there anything you'd like to say to our listeners or in the like independent bookstore community or your own independent bookstore that you go to regularly?
Well, thank you so much for hosting me, Lance. It has been fantastic to talk to you and to be part of the Skylight bookstore podcast.
Thank you.
I definitely support independent bookstores, and I think that they support us the best. It is my pleasure to be part of this. And yeah, like you should folks and you should folks buy the Foghorn Echoes and read it. I read it once. I really liked it, so I think you should too.
Oh, you did? You recommend? You recommend?
I do. Highly recommend.
It?
Yeah.
It's
5 out
highly
of
recommend.
5.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Oof,
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
know.
Good.
I know.
Gosh,
I know.
I mean, I think Danny has good recommendations, so this one sounds like a winner.
Thank you so much, Lance. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming on. It was a great episode. And to all my listeners, you all, as you know, I love you all. You all have a great rest of your day. Enjoy. Do something nice for yourself today. And if you're listening for the first time, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening, checking us out. And if it's your 85th time listening, and no, I love you a little bit more if it was. No, if you've come back, I appreciate you, and please come back and listen. There have so many good episodes coming your way, like this one. But to all of you, have a great and beautiful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skylight Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylightbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.